The vibes have improved once again. We'll see if it lasts. Gonna try and remain hopeful and optimistic with Todd Strain. I'm Darnay Tripp. It's the On Friar Podcast brought to you by NBC 7. How are you, Todd?
Hey, I'm good. And I knew this day was coming. I've been preaching this all season. I'll take all the credit.
You've been our source of hope and steady optimism while so many of us have wavered, and hopefully this is the time where the Padres really turn the corner, and some very, very good signs Tuesday night and Wednesday night after a very frustrating week leading up to that. And we will discuss as another big stretch comes up starting Thursday night as we record this Thursday afternoon, and then extending into next week as well. So lots to discuss. First things first, thanks to OG's, the sponsor of the On Friar Podcast. They're constantly updating their menu, keeping it fresh and on trend with new items like the Mediterranean Salmon Bowl, Buffalo Cauliflower, a Nashville Hot Chicken Sandwich, as well as some specialty pizzas. Make sure to take advantage of OG's loyalty program. It's super easy. You can do it online and earn loyalty points, rewards, and exclusive offers, all of which leads to fun and free food. And ordering online from OG's is easier than ever to get OG's delivered straight to your door. And this might be the last time we get to promote this. You can catch the big tournament at OG's. We're, of course, talking about the World Cup. Be entered for a chance to win an OG's soccer kit, which includes 2 small soccer goals, cones, and targets. Contests in-store only, participating locations only. The World Cup, of course, wrapping up this weekend. But obviously, if there's a big game you want to watch, if you want to catch the Padres, if you want to catch NFL preseason, maybe the PGA Tour playoffs, whatever's going on, OG's is a great place to do that. So thank you to OG's and all they do for the On Fire podcast. All right, time for the walk-up music. Hey, thanks for spending some time with us. It's the On Friar Podcast brought to you by NBC 7. He is Todd Strain. I'm Darnay Tripp. Appreciate you joining us, whether you're listening to your podcast app, of course, live on the NBC 7 YouTube page, or watching on the NBC San Diego streaming channel on Roku. However you're joining us, we certainly appreciate it. And good to be with you, Todd. Fun couple days. Vibes are good. A lot to like. How are you feeling?
I'm feeling good. And there's been so much anguish and frustration I'm speaking for Padre fans. I'm not talking about the players right now. For Padre fans, it was nice just to see, specifically last night's game, the joy and the emotion that the team played with is what this team played with starting a few years ago when Tatis arrived and Machado got here and Kim was here and Cronenworth was a revelation. That's how they played every night. That's what San Diego and Padre fans fell in love with and why they like this team so much. And that has been non-existent this whole season. So to see it come back was just a revelation. It was exciting, and hopefully it sticks. This is what everyone thought this team could be in one game. Now, we know how this is going to go probably, but it was awesome to see.
It was awesome to see. And it's funny you talk about the anguish. I think there's some segment of the fan base that's like, are we feeling more anguish than the players are? And, sometimes it's just felt like you can tell they care. You can tell it bothers them. But it's felt more kind of somber than it is like, all right, we're going to go out and attack this. And, there's been some criticism of just kind of the lack of fight, not having the dog in them. but this was a really good sign. And you make a great point. It's something I thought about last night. Like, this era of Padres baseball has been defined by that sort of electricity, right? And the personality, and how it just kind of this snowball effect. When things start going their way, it just really takes off. And, we saw that. We saw the last couple nights, a first inning first grand slam since last August, first one of the season from Gary Sanchez. And then to see them kind of build on that through the course of the game, and then to build the momentum the way they did on Wednesday as well was really encouraging. And Bob Melvin had a quote last night about Fernando Tatis Jr., because he, of course, has been like such the source of that like energy and excitement. And but the flip side of that, we've seen stretches where, whether it's in 2021 or portions of this year, where he's not quite that guy, and some of the slumps, whether it's personal or team wise, seems to kind of impact like his level of joy and enthusiasm. And you almost feel like he's got to like fake it, for the benefit of the team, just because they feed off of him to such a great extent. And so Melvin was asked about Tatis's enthusiasm last night, and he's like, it's always there, but he's played a lot. In the course of a long season, sometimes like it can seem like, he's getting down, or it's getting away from him a little bit. But I think his point was like, they see it more than maybe we realize, and it's there maybe more than we realize, which is obviously encouraging. And then when he does what he did in the seventh inning on Wednesday night, I mean, it's just vintage Fernando Tatis Jr., him doing things, whether it's tagging up on an infield fly ball, or contorting his body like he did against the Braves rookie season to avoid a tag, multi-home run games, making incredible defensive plays, and stealing home, something you just don't see just out of nowhere. Blake Snell had a phony quote like, he doesn't surprise me anymore just because I expect him to do these insane things, because he's that kind of talent. To see that, and to know what kind of energy source he is for this team, I think is really promising going forward. We'll see if it lasts, but it's good to see.
I like Bob Melvin. I believe Melvin usually means what he says, and he's pretty straightforward. I take a little exception to him saying that the energy from Tatis has been there all year, because he hasn't played with the same juice. His at-bats have been apathetic oftentimes, especially when behind. His exuberance that he plays with has not always been there. In the dugout, it hasn't been there. The energy, just the aura around him, has not been the same that it has been in previous seasons. That's not to say he's not trying and doesn't care. It just hasn't been the same juice. But as you said, Tatis he's the lifeblood of this team. If he plays with fire and passion, great things happen for other guys. We've seen that so many times throughout the course of his career. He's kind of the straw that stirs the drink, for this San Diego team. So, and that's why this is so crazy, is because this whole National League wild card chase, the teams haven't run away from the Padres. They're still catchable. So this whole terrible season, they can get hot. They can get Tatis to fire him up this last month and a half, 2 months of the season, and they can reel in those teams. So it's not a lost season yet. That's why this quick sign of his exuberance and how he has played is great.
No doubt. And I think your point is fair that, we haven't seen kind of that level of enthusiasm for Fernando Tatis Jr. Like, yeah, 100%. And, he's gone through some slumps, and he's been like, threatening to really come out of it. And he seems to be doing that now. I mean, back-to-back 3-hit games. And I want to say it was Bob Scanlon on the broadcast last night said that's a first for his career. And he's got 3-hit games in the last 6 games. And so in the last week, we've seen him kind of start to turn the corner. He's had we've talked about it for a couple of weeks, like so many hard hit balls, but not a whole lot of luck. And you just kind of been waiting for that to come around, and you figure it will with somebody with his ability and his talent. the power numbers, not what they have been. We've seen him do it this year. We've seen him do it at stretches. We've seen multi-home run games, so it's in there. But again, coming off the injuries and the procedures, you figure that would be kind of part of the equation. But if he's consistently making hard contact, extra base, whatever it looks like, that's going to be a huge plus for this offense, especially with him behind a guy in Ha-Seong Kim, who's just been fantastic. And we've seen it in the last week where they strained together hits early on, and they're in business right away. And so whatever version of high level elite Fernando Tatis Jr., even if it's not the 45 home run type pace guy, a guy that's getting multiple hits, creating havoc, doing the types of things that he did Wednesday. You're encouraged by that, not only for his benefit, but just knowing how much the team kind of builds off what he does.
Yeah, and it's a testament to Tatis's talent that, as you said, he's been hitting balls hard. He's been unlucky, is a word Padre players like to use. He's been hitting the ball hard, and he hasn't gotten a lot of results from those, but he's still putting up pretty impressive statistical numbers despite that. And he's been playing, as we said, without that usual juice, but he's still having a very solid statistical season. Not as good as he can, but it's just a testament to his talent that he's having this thing. And
real quick, before I could sense you kind of starting to go in a different direction. Before you do that, one last thing, just from on that note, and his talent and the work that goes into it. Bob Melvin had some, because I think a lot of people what's the difference? What has he done? And Melvin and Tatis kind of touched on that last night, which I wanted to mention. Melvin saying that Tatis is putting a lot of work and made some adjustments. This isn't happening for no reason. And I think part of why you're seeing him kind of spray the ball around the field is he said he's letting the ball travel a little bit more. Give you a chance to time to see it a little bit more. You make some contact, get some hits, and you build some confidence. And Tatis said, he's shortened up a little bit, and he had an interesting quote. This game can make you forget how good you are sometimes, and you can understand why a game that's based on failure, how that would get to you. And so again, I think that was kind of illuminating for him to kind of admit that, and then said that he's starting to kind of build that confidence and spraying the ball all over the field and getting some hits and that sort of thing. And so good to see. Easy to kind of understand how that approach would benefit him, and we'll see where it goes from there.
And awesome to see the steal of home. I mean, that is still, with the triple, that is the most exciting play in all of baseball. So to see that happen is special. But I want to ask you, because you were in the locker room post game last night, and we've been in so many somber, despondent Padre locker rooms, and that's kind of the lifeblood of this team. We know they kind of go when they have momentum and are feeling good. They play a different way, different brand of baseball. Was there any discernible difference after last night's game, do you think, or was it still kind of weird?
No, I think there was definitely good energy in the clubhouse. I think everybody's just kind of they know they've said the same things over and over. Yeah. They know they've felt kind of okay, is this the time? Is this the one? And it hasn't been in the past. And so I think everybody's a little bit hesitant to be we're doing it. We're getting there. But I mean, you hear what Bob Melvin said Sunday and Monday, and how despondent he was, and almost seemed kind of resigned to this is who we are and this is how the season's going to go. Very, very different. Blake Snell had, and part, so much of the conversation was around Tatis stealing home. And so that changes the tone a little bit, because everybody's just talking about kind of this incredible effort, and what it was like to watch that. And you obviously it's not, the topic and the tone on a regular basis. One interesting thing from Blake Snell, sometimes you ask a question, you get a different answer, but sometimes the answers, they don't necessarily answer your question, but sometimes you get something better. I asked Blake, does this feel like one of the more complete games that you guys have had? Because Tatis obviously did what he did. Snell, quality start. Bullpen did their part. Martinez, Suarez, Hader backing up Snell. Great defensive play by Trent Grisham. Great defensive play by Jake Cronenworth. added on late, which has been a struggle. And
Yes.
so really they checked all the boxes, and, it's not something that they've done very often. But everything kind of lined up these last couple of days. So I asked Blake, is this one of the more complete games? And he was like, I knew we were going to score runs. He was like, I wasn't worried when I gave up that run. I was like, I just knew this team was going to score runs, which, like, good on him for having that sort of confidence, because you could understand how somebody in this position, like, maybe if he didn't have that sort of belief, why that would be the case, given how things have gone this season. And so, and he even said, like, everybody knows that we got to kind of turn it on right now. And he didn't really expound on that, but just saying, like, shedding light, that, like, hey, people kind of know that, like, we got to make things happen right now. And so that seemed to kind of give him confidence that, like, all right, I give up an early run, but, like, we're going to be all right. Like, the guys are going to back me, and we're going to kind of get where we need to be. And so, I think that confidence and self-belief is important. You kind of gotta, fake it till you make it a little bit. And they've they made it happen. And so it's good to see. I think we enter into some of these games with kind of that, like, dread. Is it going to be one of these types of nights where they are lifeless, where they don't, where either they don't get the starting pitching performance, but they do score runs. They do score runs, but the bullpen falls apart.
Yeah.
That they have that belief that, like, no, we can put together, and if we do that, good things are going to happen.
Yeah. And you said fake it till they make it. They made it last night. We'll see if they can make it, the rest of this homestand. They have a key 4-game series against the Diamondbacks and 3 against the Marlins, teams that they're chasing. So while right now the vibe is positive and everyone's like, oh, here come the Padres, they're going to catch up to these teams, they still have to prove it, which is proven hard this season. So it'll be really interesting to see if everything that we're talking about, if they can finally carry it over against these two teams that they're chasing, because you can make up a lot of ground really quick in this NL wildcard. I mean, it's conceivable that if they catch fire, they could be right there by the time these next 7 games end at Petco Park.
Yeah, it's interesting. Just kind of looking at the standings again. We're recording Thursday afternoon, so we'll see what happens. Especially Thursday, Friday night. Right now they've suddenly got them and the Giants the worst record amongst the teams in wild card contention. And for a while, the Padres were like 6-4, 5-5, and everybody else is like 2-7, 3-8. Cubs are 6-5. Marlins playing a little bit more consistently lately, 5-5. Reds 4-6. Diamondbacks 4-6. Now Diamondbacks did some of that at the expense of the Padres. But there was a window there where you could really, and they did. They got within 3 games, should have got within 2, where they really had a chance to kind of kick down the door, and they didn't. And there will be other opportunities, but it kind of depends week to week. This week is the exception. Again, 41 games left, 4.5 back, 3 behind the Diamondbacks. You got 4 against them. And then you've got, currently 4.5 behind the Marlins, who you host next week. And so back-to-back series where you're playing the teams that are right in front of you. And they did not take advantage of that opportunity against the Diamondbacks. It looked like they were going to when they beat them 10-5 and they get shut out. And then, one of those kind of gut-wrenching type losses on Sunday. 4 against the Diamondbacks, 3 at home against the Marlins, 3 against the Brewers, who are, among the division leaders now at this point. Got San Francisco, end of the month, beginning of September, Philly. It's really these kind of next 2-3 weeks where, then you're playing Houston, then you're playing the Dodgers, then you're playing the A's, Rockies, Cardinals, teams that aren't in the mix. Now you got a chance to help your cause and hurt theirs simultaneously. Like, I really feel like this is the stretch, because it's part of what's been frustrating is, like, they haven't really let us know, they've given us hints of them kind of falling apart and falling out of the race. They've given us hints that, like, okay, we're going to really go for it. This might be kind of the 2-3 weeks where we really find out for sure.
Yeah, as you mentioned, the schedule, you're playing teams that you're trying to chase down. And also they get a break because the Cubs are another team they're trying to chase down. And the Cubs, Marcus Stroman, their star pitcher, has been shut down pretty much what people are saying for an extended period, whether that's weeks or a month or something like that. So you're getting a break from the Cubs losing their best pitcher, and you have the chance. It's in the Padres essentially get the chance to control their fate by playing a lot of these teams. You're not trying to stack wins against other teams and hoping these teams lost. You will have the chance to track these teams down. So the schedule has worked out well. It's a little bit of a different Major League schedule than this year than in previous years, how it's weighted, but it's weighted wild card competition heavy these last few months, which is potentially, Darnay, advantageous for the Padres.
Yeah, no doubt about it. What has been the most encouraging trend to you? And again, we find ourselves kind of grasping at these things, like show me anything that's going to give me some sort of promise. But from the last couple of days, again, we had the grand slam, we've had big innings early. I want to say the bullpen for the most part has done their job. I'm thinking back to Tuesday. I mean, look, Luis Garcia's out there late. You always get a little bit concerned, but he got through it, even though it wasn't pretty. Michael Wacha, I mean, to have him come back, and Bob Melvin basically said like he looked like he never left. To get after, experienced arm like Jack Flaherty. But yeah, Wacha, I mean, five scoreless innings after missing, a month and a half. I'm just kind of like going over these last couple games. The bullpen, the 7, 8, 9 doing what they did. Contributions from, Trent Grisham bottom of the order, obviously Gary Sanchez, Jay Cronenworth driving in some runs, Fernando Tatis Jr. Like when you take inventory of what happened, what gives you the most, optimism?
Two things kind of jump out to me. And these are things that I think they will need to achieve the success they want to have. We talk about the lineup being top heavy. Well, when you're seeing a little bit better performance from Jay Cronenworth, he's reverting back to form a little bit. The numbers have shown it. Just watching his plate appearances, he looks much better. He's hitting a lot of line drives. So that's promising. And then the other one is Gary Sanchez. He arrived in San Diego with a bang and was crushing homers. Then he kind of leveled out again. He's been on a little bit of a tear lately. So when you're getting offensive production, some of the best offensive production in all the major leagues from your catching position, a position that has been offensively challenged and almost a negative for the Padres, that is huge for this lineup moving forward. That's unexpected. Nobody expected the Padres catching position to give them pop like they have been this season from Sanchez. And then, as we know, when Campusano gets in the lineup, he hits well too. But Sanchez has been the guy, and he balances out that lineup, and he crushes balls in seemingly key situations. So those two things, Darnay, jump out to me. Cronenworth coming back to his level a little bit, and then the performance of Gary Sanchez has just been unexpected. It's a huge boost, and it helps this lineup immensely.
Yeah, no question. And I mean, heck, I'll throw Garrett Cooper in there as well, because we kind of went into this series like, all right, one of these guys, Garrett Cooper and Ji-Man Choi, going to do anything. And Ji-Man Choi, he was on the IR now, correct?
He is on the IR.
And so, or IL. And so, that's disappointing. But Garrett Cooper, hitting a homer, hits in his last 3 games. This is why you brought him in. And just to kind of give you another option there at first base. You were hoping to have, a left-handed bat with some pop in Ji-Man Choi. That hasn't panned out. But to have Cooper kind of step in, add some depth to that lineup, just give you some more options. I mean, I did like the idea of just kind of rolling with the 2 catcher combo, like night in and night out. And I think a lot of people were excited about that because of what Campusano had done, because of Gary Sanchez, like you just said. But I mean, you can't do that 7 games a week. You know what I mean? Like you got to give those guys a break at points. And, they had to continually put Cooper out there, I think, just to kind of get him going, and that's happened. And so that's another, maybe not top of the list, but a promising sign for this club.
No, and if he rediscovers any of his previous all-star form in Miami, that's another huge addition. I mean, haven't watched many Marlins games throughout the years, but to see him
Why not,
here,
Todd?
why would be if I had, I would be the biggest loser in San Diego, spending my time watching Marlins games. But early in Cooper's time here, relatively early, he really struggled. But lately, just to see him at the plate, he looks more relaxed. He's getting better swings on the ball. He's driving the ball. So I like what I've seen from him. Indeed, you see this comment here from
I did. I was just about to get to that, and I think this is a worry that a lot of people have. Appreciate JD chiming in here on YouTube, and if you are watching live on YouTube, get in the chat. We will include your comment as well. Are there too many teams to leapfrog at this point? No team has ever come back from 5 down at this point in season to get the wild card, except 21 Cardinals, won 17 in a row and jumped us. I think, people have very clear memories of 2021. And there was that series in September where, I think it was Saturday night. They were up like 2-1. Emilio Pagan gives up a 2-run homer. I forget exactly. Was it Tyler O'Neill? And they went from having a chance to take that series to losing that series. And things started to things really drifted away from them at that point. And so we remember that well. Teams have come back to win the division, later in the season with kind of more games to make up. But I think that's what makes this situation tenuous. It'd be one thing if you were sitting right behind kind of those 3 teams, or maybe if there's just like one other between you and the playoff spot. But the fact that you're one of, 4 teams that are jockeying for that last playoff spot, or is it more at this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5 teams really jockeying for that last playoff spot? So much has to go your way, and so it really, it isn't as simple as just winning a bunch of games, because you need help from so many different sources. And so it's part of a challenge. I mean, Thursday afternoon, there's a 3-way tie now for that last wild card spot, and you're sitting 4.5 games back. There's a lot of scoreboard watching, I think, to be done in the next month and a half if we want to, believe that the Padres can pull this off.
Yeah, and I mean, if the Padres were in the American League, I would say there are too many teams to leapfrog, because teams in the American League fighting, you have 4 or 5 teams fighting for that wild card spot in the American League. Those are good teams. They're not going to go in extended slumps or anything like that. Whereas in the National League, I don't believe any of these teams, the Cubs, the Reds, the Diamondbacks, Marlins, none of these, I think most of those teams will play around 500 or less the remainder of the season. So there is a window there, an opportunity for the Padres to play great baseball and pass those teams. Essentially, the Padres have a way higher ceiling to reach in these final 44 games than those teams are competing against do. So I think it's a tall ask to leapfrog all those teams, but in this National League, I think they can do it. They're not competing against like Yankees, Red Sox, Blue Jays, elite level teams. So the National League is benefiting them in this case, I would say. The stink of the National League.
I think they would like to be competing against the Yankees, because this is not, they've lost 5 in a row. But to your point, I didn't realize this. Toronto's got the last wild card spot. They're a 67 win team.
It's crazy, huh?
Phillies lead the wild card. They're a 66 win team. Mariners are 1 game out, 65 wins. Red Sox 3 games out at 63 wins. A 63 win team right now. Well, the Marlins 63 wins and are, as are the Reds, and they're tied for that last spot. And so it's a bit competition level a little bit higher. You're gonna have to do a little bit more, to your point, in the American League.
I just feel like these teams in the National League, unless they have outlier final months of the season, I just feel like they're going to come back to their level a little bit. That's my feeling. I think most in baseball would agree with that, who follow the game closely, but maybe those teams will surprise us. Just a matter of if the Padres can win enough games to catch them, and I think they can.
And that's been the hard part, right? Because we've been saying that again and again, and winning 4 games in a row shouldn't be a tall ask. Everybody else has won 4 games in a row.
Well, we got 2, right? They got to beat Zach Gallen tonight, and then they're on Friday, who gave him trouble last time.
Yes, he
I
did.
know that's not his name.
Fat, I want to say. Yeah.
AADT, I think. Yeah.
And Gallen has been very good against the Padres. He was very good against them over the weekend. And Diamondbacks, I mean, look, they're right there. And I think we were all kind of thinking, okay, this is a team that's drifting, and they've shown a little bit more life lately. And again, did that against the Padres. So what that means going forward, we'll see. But these teams are all fighting for something. We zero in on the Padres, but everybody's got a lot to play for at this point. It's just so crazy. They were 6 games below 500. Was it 7 games below 500 2 nights ago? 56 and 63. It's just wild. How far back they're going to have to come. And just the fact that it's like you've known it all season, going back and looking at different stretches, and you're like, oh yeah, they've been below 500 for a long, long time. It's not like they tanked it for a week and, that was that. They've kind of been teetering the entire season. And it's been a struggle to get back. And look, from a fan standpoint, it feels a little bit different because of what happened Tuesday and Wednesday, but going back to Monday and before the game Tuesday, I'm like, they've just been through it this year. And so if any fan was like, you know what, I might just hold off until they get to 500 before I really re-engage. I wouldn't blame you, because you're not going to get anywhere if you're below 500. And as long as you're struggling to reach that point, you're probably just feeling really, really frustrated. And so it would be reasonable to kind of do your mental health and well-being a break and take a break from the team. But then the problem is you miss these great moments that we had. Finally hitting a grand slam, Tatis stealing home. Real quick on Tatis, I went to Petco Wednesday night just to kind of get some post-game stuff. And so I got there late, just in time for the last inning or so. So it's driving around. It's close to Lolita's, maybe a block in from Lolita's, and kind of listening, on the radio. And I just hear this roar from inside my car. I was like, well, somebody just hit a home run. That wasn't a strikeout roar. That wasn't a double roar. That was a home run roar. So I peek at my ESPN app, and Juan Soto's at the plate. And I'm like, oh, Juan Soto hit a homer. That's great. And then I actually hear what actually happened. So a quick aside, I mean, just it's one of the things we love about Petco Park and the environment down there, being in my car blocks away, just hearing and feeling this roar. That was really cool. And so that all goes against what I just said. Hey, fans, take a break if you need to take a break, if this team is frustrating you, because there is always the possibility that you miss cool stuff that we experienced the last couple of nights.
Yeah. And I mean, you feel free to take a break, as you said, until they get to 500. But at the same time, feel free to watch. Feel free to watch this last month of the season and live and die with this team. This is what you want as a fan. You want your team to have to play meaningful games late in the season. No Padre fan is happy about what's led up to this point, and it's been miserable. And as we've gone over many times, but here you are playing meaningful games. And thank goodness for the expanded playoffs. Most people don't like it, or I should say many people don't like it, but it allows more teams to be in play for the postseason later in the season. It gives more MLB teams something to play for. And heck, this $280 million Padre team shouldn't be in this position, but they are benefiting right now from the expanded playoffs. And thank goodness, because it gives San Diego fans a reason to be involved these last few months, because under the old format, they would be dead and buried and the season would already be over.
Yeah, I saw a note. I forget who it was from, one of the insider types. I don't know if it was John Heyman, saying, I don't know if this is if there's talk of this or if it was just an idea that was thrown out there. of moving the trade deadline back to mid-August, giving teams more time to kind of position themselves and see where they're at. And also more teams would kind of stay engaged, as the Padres were, like right up until the deadline, to see where they're going to be and what they should do. And an interesting thing, I think, I like it where it's at. There's so much trade deadline talk for weeks going up to it.
Yeah.
By the time August 1st rolls around, I'm pretty ready for the deadline. But I think you make a good point in more teams having an opportunity to be in it and to go for it and to position themselves and to acquire talent and that sort of thing. Maybe it would have a similar effect of, instead of teams kind of checking out in mid-late July, they hang on until like early mid-August to see where they're at before they really sell off and pull the plug. The other thing is, it leaves you a pretty short period of time with, in the instance of the Padres last year, when you get Juan Soto and Josh Hader, 2 extra weeks to kind of incorporate those guys and get them comfortable. That seems useful. And as we've learned, like, different guys respond differently to being added to a baseball team, and it's not always an easy transition. And so I think it's worth kind of taking that into account as well.
Yeah, to me, I would push it back because you have 2 things that are pulling in opposite directions. You've essentially extended teams' windows to compete in the season by expanding the playoffs. But then when you continue to have the old school trade deadline, you're asking teams to make a decision on if they're going to be competitive earlier in the season, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
You're essentially asking those teams, like the Angels, where they could have sold off or they eventually went for it. You're asking them to make a decision earlier in the season, before August 1st was a cutoff date, when there was just one wild card or one division champ that would go to the playoffs, and you kind of knew where you stood. Now that you have more teams inclusive, or more teams potentially for the playoffs, you're asking teams to make decisions on their season earlier than it is necessary, I feel. Plus, I like trades. So push it back, get more teams involved. Heck.
Yeah.
Maybe the Angels would trade Ohtani for the trade deadline was August 15th.
I feel like it's worth mentioning kind of the one topic that piqued the interest of Padres fans that emerged Sunday night from USA Today's Bob Nightingale. The possibility of, if the Padres don't make the playoffs, it could fall on Bob Melvin and bench coach slash offensive coordinator Ryan Flaherty could be viewed as successor. This now feels a long ways away because this was Sunday night into Monday. It was a huge topic then. And then, when you have a couple games like we did Wednesday and Thursday, kind of put some of that on the back burner. There's been a few mornings where I've woken up and wondered, like, am I going to have to cover a managerial change today? And not that there's been any sort of like hints or clues into that, but just kind of the worry and the concern and the way things have trended at points. But that on one hand caught me by surprise. On the other hand, I think we've known that Flaherty is an AJ Preller guy. But I think it's fair to wonder, what about this individual gives us reason to believe that he is equipped to kind of lead this team to where they want to go, where we expect them to go, especially since, he would be, of course, a first-time manager. We've seen first-time managers that AJ Preller has relationships with. It, feels like that kind of bond, that connection can do them some good, and it hasn't worked out. So curious what you make of that. Again, if they keep doing what they're doing, this isn't going to be a topic because Melvin's going to stick around. But this is one of those things that now in the moment doesn't feel as pressing as it did Monday, but that could very easily change with a bad week.
Well, I think it just kind of goes back to the whole thing that everyone's been saying, like, I don't know. Why are you struggling? I don't know. If I knew, I would change it. I think that's been the answer, the uncertainty throughout the organization, from the players to the manager, to the coaching staff, to the front office. They don't know why they're having a bad season. So what's the easiest way to possibly jumpstart the season or make a change? it's a manager. You can't get rid of Juan Soto. You can't get rid of Manny Machado. You're not going to change the lineup a whole lot. You're not going to change the pitching staff. Where's the one place you can possibly make a change? It's manager. It's the easiest change to make. And when you see the team playing kind of often lifeless on the field, you think maybe a managerial change can change that. So I think that's where it comes from. And I think that's fair when you have a team that's been underperforming like the Padres, that has this many good players, this much money invested. And when everyone in that organization still thinks this team can win, but maybe a change needs to be made, you explore that option. They didn't make that change. I don't think they really got close to it, but I can see where that talk comes from. But this isn't on Melvin. I think everyone knows this isn't on Melvin. This is on the players. They just need to play better. But if you're grasping at straws, 3/4 of the way through the season, the one straw you can grasp is changing the manager. Will Ryan Flaherty ever manage in the major leagues? I have no idea. Would he be good for the Padres? I have no idea. But I think your best bet is to ride it out with Melvin and just play better baseball. Get better baseball from your star players. That's the best thing to do.
Yeah, I was looking at something from earlier this week. Padres in high leverage at bats last year to this year.
Yeah.
Average last year 248. Average this year 191. This was as of Tuesday afternoon.
Yeah.
On base 329 down to 277. Slug 414 down to 294. WRC plus 109 with 100 being basically average. 59 this year. And so, to your point, that points directly at the players. I've said on one hand, I agree. I don't believe Bob Melvin is to blame. I don't think firing him cures your ills. I think there are other issues that need to be addressed. But if you're in his seat and can't turn things around, that kind of puts more and more of the onus on you, fairly or not. If they made that decision, would I feel good about it? No. Is there part of me that could maybe understand it? I guess. But I think in an ideal world, this team kind of figures out and sticks with Bob Melvin going forward. Just because I don't know that the alternative does you any better. And I would assume if they were to go with Ryan Flaherty, they'd keep Ruben Niebla around. Niebla is the guy that I'm most concerned with. Regardless of what happens, I want that guy in this organization. I'd be a bit surprised and I guess concerned if you hire from within after a season like this, especially a guy that doesn't have kind of a proven track record. But we don't know that much about Ryan Flaherty. His unit hasn't exactly overperformed this year. But as other, smarter baseball people than me has suggested, it's harder for a hitting coach to kind of have a direct impact the way that Niebla, pitching coach, has on his group. And I don't know if it's the best look to kind of have this succession plan in place.
Yeah.
We don't know what conversations have happened in the past. Does Bob Melvin know that they have this idea about Ryan Flaherty and maybe he's kind of being groomed for the position, or is that a surprise to Bob Melvin as well? Because I think that's pretty telling too. One thing, I heard Kevin Acee with Darren Smith on Monday, and he made it sound like, and I wasn't aware of this, that, Bob Melvin has a 3-year contract next year, obviously being the last year of that deal, that there seemed to be some indication that this could have been he went into it saying this might be my last contract anyways.
Yeah.
And so what does that mean? Do you just ride it out with Melvin and say, okay, what's next after that? Or do you ride it out with him and see if he wants to continue to manage? That was new to me. I'd have to look into that a little bit more. But that obviously is telling of the situation as well and might inform how they kind of handle it going forward.
Yeah, if you're an accomplished manager or NBA coach or NFL coach, you rarely head into what would be your lame duck season, your last season. Most coaches get extended of any rebuke or who have any sort of success as managers or coaches at a major league level, you rarely head into the last year of your deal without an extension. Just doesn't give you the job security. It's not how you want to go about managing the team. We'll see what happens with Melvin. There's also something to keep in mind, which you hear rumors of, and I don't know. I don't have any firsthand knowledge of it, but you hear it again. There's a little bit of a disconnect between the front office, between Preller and Melvin, and they don't exactly see eye to eye. So, like any kind of work relationship, if you are not on the same level as your superiors, that can lead to a little tension and potentially thoughts of change, even though you may be pretty good at your job. So it'll be something to keep an eye on. But it comes back to the players to me, Darnay. I mean, they could bring in Joe Torre, but I gave this stat Sunday on Sports Trap. In their last 6 losses, as of Sunday, Tatis, Soto, Machado were 6 for 69.
Yeah,
like Joe Torre's managing, Tommy Lasorda is managing, whoever you want, Tony La Russa, all the all-time greats,
Bruce Bochy.
Bruce Bochy's, there you go. Maybe they wouldn't be 6 for 69 with Boch. Just kidding. But like you got to hit, you got to perform. Those guys were clearly not at their A game then. So
real quick, because you were in there Wednesday when Manny and Tatis were asked about Bob Melvin. What was the tone?
Manny gave a pretty generic, that's a question for AJ. Front office got to make those decisions. We just go out there and compete and play. It was kind of a non-answer, not endorsing, not diminishing Melvin as a manager either way. Tatis was more like, I like Bob Melvin. I think he's a good manager. We just got to play better for him. So that's what you got. There wasn't a huge outpouring of love, but nothing at all hinting that they are upset with him. Yeah. So I think there's just general frustration all around, whether you're in a job, a work, a rec team, a pro team, when you're underperforming and everyone is struggling and missing and off sync, like there's going to be frustration and you're going to say, I don't know that. I don't know the answer to this. I can't believe we're doing it this way. Maybe we should do something different, right? Don't ask me. Go ask him. Go ask those guys over there. That would be, it's natural. So we pick apart every part of this Padres frustrating season, but these questions and these answers would come up in any part of society if you were going through this.
It's true. It's a very good point. Good note to end on. Fortunately, at least things have been moving in a more positive direction. And again, these
Padres to the playoffs. Come on, mark it down.
These big existential, questions and concerns have taken a backseat at least for a couple days, and we'll see if that continues into Thursday night and into the weekend and into next week. And we will be sure to discuss next week, or if anything notable does pop up. Myself, Todd Strain, Derek Togerson, we will be here with you, and I think we might have a former Padre on next week.
Ooh.
Who should be able to offer some insight into this clubhouse and what's going on this season. So we call that a tease in the biz, Todd.
Is he right-handed?
A deep tease. We will find out. Find out.
Okay.
It'd be a return visitor on the pod. I don't want to name names, but we'll find out.
Okay.
I've been in touch with this individual. So hopefully that's the case next week. But again, appreciate you being with us all season long. Thanks for watching on the NBC7 YouTube page. Again, love your questions and comments. Love to get to those. So hit us up for our next live. And thanks for watching on the NBC San Diego streaming channel. This podcast has done very well on the streaming channel, Todd. I just got some word from the bosses in the last couple of weeks. Very, very well. And so it means a lot to us that when you're scrolling through your Roku TV channels and see us and you're spending some time hanging out with us, means a lot. And of course, listening on your podcast app, our YouTube numbers have been really good lately. And so it's all very, very encouraging. We love what we do and love any sort of feedback. And it's great to know that you are enjoying this with us as well. So thanks as always. Thanks to you, Todd, and we will see you next week.